climate change is significant shifts in the overall ecosystem of the planet. It's large-scale sorts of changes that occur over a long period of time, and that differentiates it from weather, which are small-scale kinds of changes that we see every day. And these large-scale changes take inputs from all of Earth's biological and physical systems and average it over the space of the globe.
If we think about driving our car to a shopping mall on an August afternoon and rolling up the windows, locking the door, going in for shopping and coming out a couple of hours later, and the car is too hot to get into. The engine has been off the whole time. How does it get warmer inside? Well, the sunshine passes through the glass of the car and it warms up the interior, and that heat that's given off from that warming up dissipates, but it gets trapped inside the car by the glass. And if we were talking about a greenhouse, which is basically a glass structure, the same thing happens where the sunshine passes through the glass walls and it warms up the inside, and the heat then is trapped on its way out by it's trapped or slowed down by the glass itself. If we think of the Earth globally, the sunshine is hitting the surface of the Earth and warming up the surface of the Earth, and the heat is dissipating off the surface of the Earth as if the Earth were kind of like a radiator. There is no glass that's preventing the heat or trapping the heat, but there are molecules that trap heat and slow down the release of that heat from the surface.
Well, humans are significant contributors, the main contributors to climate change. And the way that we do that is primarily through the use of fossil fuels.
Carbon dioxide, but there are other ways as well. So one, for example, is deforestation, of just that trees kind of suck up a lot of carbon dioxide and store it. So if we're removing trees and cutting down those regions for other purposes, then that area is not going to take up that CO2. And there's other reasons as well, just kind of having kind of inefficient use of fuels and other things that makes this use fossil fuels more than we necessarily need to.
Molecules that help trap the heat, carbon dioxide and methane, those molecules have carbon in them. They're made up. They have carbon and other atoms in them, but they are made in part by taking biological molecules that make up plants, animals, and all living creatures, and when those molecules are broken down and released, they are often released as carbon dioxide. They can be released as methane, and so any carbon-based molecules that we burn, such as fossil fuels like oil, gasoline, and even non-fossil fuels like wood. When we burn these molecules, we're basically breaking them down. And when we break them down, the carbon atoms and the oxygen atoms join together to make carbon dioxide. Carbon atoms and hydrogen atoms come together to make methane. And so these gases are produced. So when we burn gasoline, out of our tailpipe comes carbon dioxide, come greenhouse gases.
So for our future, it can be a lot, especially let's say where we live now, so close to the ocean, that sea level rise is one of the main effects of having that overall temperature rise. I can see it in the birds that I work with that live on the shore, their nests are right on the ground and get flooded more and more. frequently. For us, that's one, is that there'll be increased flooding, but then also other things like increased intensity of hurricanes, increased storms, and so on. So there's a lot of effects on humans, even disease. So mosquitoes can now live in places where they couldn't live before. So there's a lot of effects on us.
It seems at this point there's such a significant increase since the beginning of the industrial age in carbon dioxide in the atmosphere that there's no way to avoid a significant increase in temperature. I think what is being debated right now is are we looking at something that we can stop it at about 1.5 degrees Celsius, or are we potentially looking at something that will increase the overall global temperature by 4 degrees Celsius. At 1.5 degrees Celsius to 2 degrees Celsius, that's going to be pretty bad for us. 4 degrees Celsius is really extinction level event of change in climate.
As the world's temperatures, the global temperature edges upward, even little bits, even small amounts, will change the various systems that are affected by that, and some systems are more affected by temperature rise than others. But one obvious thing is that the glaciers and ice nearer the poles are melting because the temperatures are now rising to the point where they stay above freezing long enough for a considerable amount of melting to happen.
So yes, everything. There's many things that we can do. There's lots of things that people can do on a small scale and really decreasing your carbon footprint. There are lots of carbon footprint calculators that you can find online. So you can see what of the kinds of activities about your diet, about your consumption, about your travel, about your living situation, what of those is the greatest contributor to your carbon footprint. And you can do things to mitigate that. Take public transportation, change your diet, insulate your house and decrease the temperature for both, decrease the temperature for heat, increase the temperature for AC. So those are things that people can do in their everyday lives. But really, to make the most substantial changes, we need fundamental restructuring of our economic systems. How we move around the globe, each person individually, but also how our systems are structured.
The main thing we can do is kind of limit how much use of fossil fuels that we have, and that's something that kind of everyone can do a little bit, but obviously it depends on your kind of situation as well. But a lot of it's just kind of increasing efficiency of sort of what we're doing, and there are places where you could use something that's not a fossil fuel. We do anyway, or kind of use sort of inefficient mechanisms of building things that require a lot of use of fossil fuels as well.
We know from the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change and their reports that much of this climate change is due to human activities, such as the burning of fossil fuels. And while it is difficult to imagine suddenly stopping the burning of fossil fuels, we do have to move quickly in the direction of fueling our economies, our state economies, our national economies, using energy sources that do not contribute to the production of greenhouse gases.
The idea of 4 degrees Celsius increase that is really an extinction event change, an extinction level change, can be overwhelming. But I think the positive thing to think about for that is that every 0.5 degree Celsius that we can prevent saves hundreds of thousands of lives and dozens of species. And so working towards the goal to mitigate it as much as possible is worth it, right? It's never too late to do something to increase the quality of everybody's life.